Special meeting of Tuesday, February 25th. I will tell you, as an aside, before we start with the roll call and the exciting agenda that we have tonight, that I can't remember the last time, and I've been on for town council for 14 years. I can't remember a council meeting that I've looked more forward to than I was looking forward to tonight's. And as the agenda rolls out, especially the top part of the agenda, you will see why. So with that, I will ask Madam Clerk to call the roll.
Peter Talbot.
Here.
Don Walsh. Here. David Belliver. Here. John Mylone. Here. Fiona Pearson. Here. Trisha Kramer. Greg Wolf. Here. Dina Allard.
Here.
And Jim Jinks. Here. Quorum is present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We are honored to kick off our meeting tonight with the presentation of the colors from PAC 114. So I would ask everyone to rise, and as the colors are presented, and then PAC 114 will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up, we have item 3, public communication, and I'm going to do some juggling with the items here. And we're going to start with the recognition of 2 Eagle Scouts, Thomas Franco and Finn Hickey. So if I could have Thomas and Finn come up to the podium, please.
That's the podium.
Yes. So I have 2 proclamations that I will read and come down and present to the 2 of you, and then I would ask you to come accept the congratulations of the full council. Whereas Finn Hickey, through his ambitious pursuit of achievement, has attained the rank of Eagle Scout, and whereas Finn demonstrates excellence in youth leadership, setting a great example for the younger scouts, and whereas his Eagle Scout project was building 2 scaled-up versions of the board game Battleship that veterans recovering from illness will play at the West Haven VA Hospital, and whereas Finn is dedicated to scouting, and he and the local troops of Boy Scouts of America and their families have been an influence for good in our community for many years. Now, therefore, I, Peter J. Talbot, Mayor and Chairman of the Town Council, on behalf of the Town Council and all the citizens of Cheshire, by this certificate of recognition, do hereby indicate to Finn and his family and Scout leaders our gratitude for his leadership, hard work, and dedication to the community, and we congratulate Finn on his achievement of Eagle Scout. Dated at Cheshire, Connecticut, this 25th day of February, 2025. This is a certificate of recognition for Eagle Scout Thomas Franco. Whereas Thomas Franco, through his ambitious pursuit of achievement, has attained the rank of Eagle Scout, and whereas Thomas demonstrates excellence in youth leadership, setting a great example for the younger scouts, and whereas his Eagle Scout project was to build and install 2 4-chamber bat houses at Fresh Meadows Wildlife Sanctuary and create an informational poster for the Trailhead kiosk to share information about bats and their habitats. And whereas Thomas is dedicated to scouting, and he and the local troops of Boy Scouts of America and their families have been an influence for good in our community for many years. Now, therefore, I, Peter J. Talbot, Mayor and Chair of the Town Council, on behalf of the Town Council and all the citizens of Cheshire, by this certificate of recognition, do hereby indicate to Thomas and his family and Scout leaders our gratitude for his leadership, hard work, and dedication to the community, and we congratulate Thomas on his achievement of Eagle Scout. Dated at Cheshire, Connecticut, this 25th day of February, 2025. I'm going to double dip. Congratulations. We also have a proclamation for Scouting Recognition Day, February 8th, 2025. Whereas the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts of America are the world's largest organizations dedicated to helping girls and boys everywhere build character, gain skills for success in the real world, and develop conviction about their own potential and self-worth, which will serve them all their lives. And whereas Scouting has helped millions of young people to confront difficult situations and make responsible decisions. And whereas Scouting instills civic values and virtue in young people, which are integral with the ideals, morals, and principles which America embodies. And whereas Scouting in Cheshire has contributed to the beautification of our town in the form of numerous projects which enrich the appearance and quality of life in Cheshire. And now, therefore, I, Peter J. Talbot, Mayor and Chair of the Town Council, on behalf of the Town Council and all the citizens of Cheshire, by this proclamation, do hereby recognize Saturday, February 8th, 2025, as Scouting Day and acknowledge the scouting organizations and all their young participants and volunteers. Dated at Cheshire, Connecticut, this 25th day of February, 2025. And our final item under number 3 is also very special this evening, and that is the recognition of Cheshire's own John White for his induction into the Connecticut Veterans Hall of Fame. Mr. White, if you would go up to the podium, please. I have a certificate of recognition for you, Mr. White. Whereas John White served in the United States Navy from 1961 to 1965, during the Vietnam War as a naval officer. And whereas he was the local VFW Post 10052 commander for 20 years, a lifetime member of American Legion Post number 92, and a member of the Army Air Force Roundtable of Connecticut. And whereas John White was instrumental in the development and construction of the Medal of Honor Plaza, initiating the naming of a portion of Route 10 as the Medal of Honor Highway, and whereas, as a former teacher in town, he has been proactive in making sure that both students and all members of the community are kept aware of the importance of honoring our veterans, flag, and country. And whereas, in January 2025, he was one of 14 honorees inducted into the Connecticut Hall of Fame, Veterans Hall of Fame's 20th class of Distinguished Connecticut Veterans. Therefore, I, Peter J. Talbot, Mayor and Chair of the Town Council, on behalf of the Town Council and all the citizens of Cheshire, do hereby congratulate and publicly acknowledge John White for his prestigious honor, as well as his lasting impact both within and outside the town of Cheshire. Dated at Cheshire, Connecticut, this 25th day of February, 2025.
My hearing aids were off. Did you say something?
Mr. White, even though there is no public speaking on the officially on the agenda tonight, you have certainly earned the ability to utilize the microphone to say a few words if you so choose.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When the Declaration of Independence was first published and disseminated around the world, it sent shockwaves through the Western civilization, because for the first time in human history, since our ancestors first stood on two legs, there was a new form of government being proposed in which people rule themselves. Not a king, not a queen, not a monarch, not a dictator or any other elite group, but I'll find it in just a minute. A radically new form of government in which each person is equal to all other citizens of that nation. There are 4 references to God in the Declaration of Independence. I point this out because it's so important for every American to know this and to understand what it means. The references are Creator, nature's God, Governor of the universe, and divine providence. If you put all those together, it gives you a clear understanding of why we Americans rule ourselves, because as William Penn said to his early colonists, if we do not rule ourselves, we will surely be ruled by tyrants. So I, as an American, ask you to share with me your feeling of gratitude and public responsibility for our freedom, our equality, our rights, our justice, and our human dignity. Those are the basic principles that make America operate, and we should keep that in mind in all that we do as Americans, even when we're out of the country. Amen. Peter,
Thank you, Jim.
thank you.
Please.
All right, I'll follow you.
That's the person to see right here in the front. We have a great, like I said, there's no official public comment on the agenda tonight, but we have a great crowd of veterans and people to honor Mr. White. So if there's anyone who would like to speak, I would certainly allow that this evening, so. Just state your name and address for the record. Leslie.
Leslie Marinero, 14 Winged Foot Court, Cheshire. I just want to expand upon what John said. He's been a mentor not just to me, but to a lot of people that are involved in veteran affairs in town. You know, he used to say, oh, it's just a parade one day a year, you know. Here we all are. But, you know, we all talk about the big things that John has done. You know, the Medal of Honor Highway, a lot of the things that he's done around town to support veterans going in the schools, but there's a lot of little things. You know, John shows up at any time that there's a veteran in need. If they have health concerns, if there is a funeral and he has to say a few words, John is always there. If someone calls up any of the people involved with veteran affairs in town, and there's a veteran that is looking for something with their medals or looking for some support in an area, John always was a contact point person. And I just want to say we're very, very lucky in Cheshire that we had someone like John. I know I personally and a lot of people here in the room are very lucky to have had him to guide us and mentor us so that we continue doing the veteran affairs and veteran support. And we're very thankful for the town for the support they give to the local veterans as well. And we were up in Rocky Hill when John got his honor, and we're all very proud of him for getting this honor, and I just want to commend him on that.
Leslie, thank you so much. Anyone else?
I can't miss the opportunity of a free mic. Matt Bowman, 422 Maple Avenue. I had the honor of knowing John for a long time. John was my teacher of English, and if any of you know the sitcom Welcome Back, Kotter, his class was the Sweat Hogs. John had the ability to take kids that didn't want to learn, didn't want to be in class, and to motivate them and to teach them. I asked him how long it's been since I had him in class. Of course, he couldn't answer. It was 57 years ago. And John probably doesn't remember me meeting him at the farm shop when I made the decision to go into the Marine Corps. And I said, John, I've made my decision. I'm going to go in the Marine Corps. He goes, good luck. But John has always been an asset to the town of Cheshire. He's a wonderful person, has a wonderful family, and congratulations, John.
I told you this was an exciting night tonight, and we move into our, Mr. Bennett, I'm sorry.
Just one more thing.
Sure.
I know many of you know my daughter Susanna, and she's a blessing, and she's the one that pulled all the information together that John had and wrote the narrative, which is usually pretty key to getting admitted into the Hall of Fame. And so she's got a 3-for-3 record now, so Al Adinolfi was the other one from Cheshire. But nonetheless, many of you know, and I'm very proud of my daughter Susanna, and thank her for all her efforts, even to the town in the town hall here, so.
Moving on to new business, we have a very exciting item A, which is the adoption of the name for the new North End Elementary School. Mr. Jenks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my honor and pleasure to be stating this resolution tonight, probably the best one I've ever had, actually. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves resolution number 022525-1, whereas the Town of Cheshire is constructing a new elementary school located in the northeast corner of Marion Road at Jarvis Street, and whereas the Town Council held a public hearing on January 16, 2025, to solicit naming proposals for the new North End Elementary School, and whereas following the public hearing, the Town Council and Board of Education Planning Committee met to review the proposals and make a recommendation, and whereas the Town Council and the Board of Education Planning Committees have recommended the name Barnum Elementary School, and whereas the name Colonel Harvey C. Barnum Jr. meets all the criteria as set forth in the Town of Cheshire's policy on the naming of town-owned property, now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to the recommendation of the Town Council and Board of Education Planning Committees, the Town Council hereby adopts the name Barnum Elementary School in honor of Colonel Harvey C. Barnum Jr. for the new North End Elementary School, and authorizes the Next Generation School Building Committee and the town manager to take any and all necessary actions to finalize this naming.
Thank you, Mr. Jenks. Thank you, Ms. Pearson, for the second. To kick off discussion, I will tell you that we were approached in December of 2022 by Haley Falk, who got the ball rolling. And she came and spoke at a town council meeting and suggested that Colonel Barnum would be an absolutely appropriate name for the new school that was going in the north end of town. So from that point, there were several things that happened. There was first a joint meeting of the planning committees of both the town council and the Board of Education that were held. From there, we kind of set out the process that would take place, ultimately culminating in the naming of the school. The next piece was a public hearing that was held. There was some additional names that were added to the list. The full town council and full Board of Education received a rubric and voted on a set of criteria that adhered to the town's naming policy. Subsequent to that vote last night, another meeting of the joint planning committees of both the town council and Board of Education was held. And at that time, last evening, the recommendation was brought forward that the town council honor Colonel Harvey C. Barnum with the naming of the school. And that kicks off our discussion, and I will turn it over to my colleagues on the council for any comments or questions or thoughts that they may have before we do a vote. And we'll also allow the public to make some comments tonight prior to that as well. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to say, as not being a native of Cheshire, but having made Cheshire my home for the past almost 30 years, I didn't grow up hearing stories of Colonel Barnum, but for the past 30 years, being a resident here, I have heard many stories about him, about what he's done for the scouting groups in town, what he's done for our country. There is no better name for this school than Colonel Barnum, and I'm proud to be supporting this tonight. When Haley Falk first came to us almost 2.5 years ago, I said, wow, that's a no-brainer. And it pretty much was. I mean, we had to listen to everybody, but I think for the achievements, not only that what he's done for our country, but what he's done for this town are extremely important for the young people to understand. And I like to know that the young people who will be educated in that school will be learning about the history, the importance of veterans, and the importance of Colonel Barnum and what he's meant not only to this town, to the state, but to this country. So I am proud to be supporting this, and I look forward to the opening of the Colonel Barnum School next year. So thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Malone?
Thank you, Peter. I was very pleased to sit on this committee and was happy to see the process, the open process that we went through to consider names for this new school. And I was very impressed, as with Don, I wasn't aware of Colonel Barnum's history and his achievements, but I learned a lot. And we also heard from other people who were very compelling about what they provided to the town of Cheshire, which was wonderful. But clearly, Colonel Barnum was the correct choice for this. We're overjoyed. We're happy that many veterans came to support that name and urge us to consider it seriously. And I'm overjoyed that we're moving forward in this direction. So thank you.
Mr. Velleber?
Sure. Which way we're going on this? Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I, too, am happy and excited to be able to vote for this resolution to name this school after Barney Barnum. We've been hearing a lot about Colonel Barnum over the last couple of years. And it's really kind of interesting to see, growing up in town, maybe been here a little longer than Don, but still not a native because I wasn't born here, right? But the interesting thing is that, all over that time, the things you hear and the stories you hear, it's truly amazing what he's been to this community and to, outside this community, both working within the community as well as the veterans community. And so it's very important. I mean, it was also interesting when we had our public hearing, we sort of had this idea of Barnum as a name, but some of the other names that were put up as part of the public hearing were also very compelling as well. And so, I mean, I appreciate everyone who came out to that public hearing and came up with some additional names. And, one was named after, potentially after an individual who's done a lot for this community as well. And so I don't want anyone to think that that's a slight for that person. But, it's truly impressive, the resume of all the people that were put forth as possible persons for whom the school is named after, as well as some of the interesting other names that were come up that were not people related, but were just historically related to that school. But after taking all those things into consideration, and after the wonderful amounts of community involvement and recognition, I think that the Barnum Elementary School will be a fitting, not only fitting addition to Cheshire, but a fitting award and recognition to a person who's been a great resident, citizen, and veteran. So thank you very much, and I look forward to voting in favor of this resolution.
Ms. Pearson?
I, too, just want to thank everyone who attended meetings during our public comment and submitted suggestions, for submitting letters, recommendations. We learned a great deal about our town's history through this process, and the amazing people who live in our community and who have contributed to our community. I'm honored to be able to vote tonight in support of the naming of the new elementary school in recognition of Colonel Barnum's contributions. But again, I just want to thank everyone for their letters, for their advocacy, and for their enthusiasm and passion for our community.
Thank you, Ms. Pearson. Mr. Jinks, as we
Since
come
we're,
down
since
the
we're going
line.
in order,
Yeah.
I just want to echo what everyone else has already mentioned, but, you know, it's certainly a great honor for us to be able to do this, but, I mean, the service that Mr. Barnum, or Colonel Barnum has offered to our community over the years is really remarkable. So we are very lucky to have had him as part of our community and been born here and be a part of the high school. He was president of the high school class, senior class, played football, part of the Boy Scouts. So he's done a lot for our community. You know, so I was an early adopter of his name. I was kind of forgetting there was a whole process we were going to go through to do this, but you know, it certainly it makes a ton of sense for us to name the school after Colonel Barnum. And I happened to be down in Charleston last week, and there's the Medal of Honor Museum there at the USS Yorktown, and his name is among the 3,500 or so other Medal of Honor recipients, which is pretty impressive that he's one of ours. So. Again, it's a great honor, and it certainly makes it's just right for us to do this, to name the school after him. I will say that he had a destroyer named after him, and the destroyer lifespan is about 35, 40 years from what I understand. So given how often we build schools in Cheshire, I think this will be a much longer honor for him. So I think it's great that it's going to be a Barnum Elementary School. So thank you.
Ms. Allard.
So I prepared something because I tend to speak in draft and then go home and say, oh, I wish I said something. So I wrote something down. And first, I just want to thank everybody who provided suggestions. Your input has truly enriched my understanding of Cheshire's history and strengthened my appreciation for this wonderful town. Making a decision on naming the new North End School was not a task I took lightly. However, after delving deeper into Harvey Barnum's story, the choice became clear. While his leadership and courage on the battlefield alone are impressive and worthy, his selfless continuation to public service in his civilian life truly impressed me the most. Harvey Barnum embodies courage and resiliency, integrity and leadership, sacrifice and compassion. These are qualities we aim to instill in our students. Naming our school in his honor reflects our community's commitment to these ideals and serves as a daily reminder of the extraordinary potential within each of us. I look forward to the positive impact Barnum Elementary School will have on our community, and I'm honored to make this vote tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. With that, before I make some final comments and call for a vote, if there are members of the public that would like to speak, Haley, if you want to come up and and kind of complete the circle, you can certainly do that. If no one wants to speak, that's okay as well, but I certainly want to give you the opportunity, since you're here, to speak if you'd like to.
I don't have too much to say, but I just wanted to say thank you to all of you on the town council for being able to make this happen. I know I mentioned this 2.5 years ago, but having this named after Colonel Barnum is just such an honor in so many ways, and it's an honor to the students who are going to walk through these schools and know that they're walking in a school named after a true hero that they should take after. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for all of the support, and it really does mean a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Haley. So before I call for a vote, I have a couple things I'd like to say. It's amazing too, and Jim stole a little bit of my thunder by saying, we kicked off tonight with the presentation of the colors from some of our Boy Scouts. We had Eagle Scouts in attendance tonight, and Barney was a Boy Scout in this town. Played football in this town, grew up in this town, served in on the fire department for many years as a volunteer in this town. Signed up for the service, went into the military, and through his incredible bravery, came back and was awarded a Congressional Medal of Honor. And as a town, we couldn't be more proud of having Barney Barnum be from Cheshire, Connecticut. You know, I look around the room, and there probably are only a handful of people in this room that can remember exactly where they were on July 1st, 1967. Now, part of that is because a lot of you weren't born at July 1st of 67. But I know exactly where I was and can probably point out the spot on Route 10 where I sat as the parade in honor of Barney Barnum went by as Cheshire celebrated Barney Barnum Day. So this is a kind of completes a circle for me too, Haley, in that, you know, I was there on that day when Cheshire first recognized a Congressional Medal of Honor winner, and I'm proud to be at this seat tonight to call for the vote that will name a school in honor of Colonel Barnum. And with that, I will call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously by those present. Thank you all. I want to thank the veterans so much. I want to thank the veterans so much for being here. I think it was only fitting that on a night that we honored John White, that we also honored Colonel Harvey C. Barnum. So with that, we will get on with our agenda, and again, thank you all for being here tonight. Item B is acceptance and appropriation of $4,623.25 in the lost and paid account to the library gift account for general purposes. Mr. Veliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that Town Council approves Resolution 022525-2. Be it resolved, the Town Council hereby accepts and appropriates $4,623.25 in the lost and paid account to the library gift account for general purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Thank you, Mr. Walsh, for the second. Discussion, Mr. Veliver, or?
Do we really need?
Yeah.
So let me pull up the background here. Hold on.
Well, let me just
That's why I always like paper. I always like paper. It's much easier to flip through.
Let me just find out if there's any questions. Seeing if there's no questions, then we'll.
We are just appropriating the money to use for general purposes for the library as requested.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. So.
Any questions from colleagues? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously by those present. Item C is the acceptance and appropriation of a $200 donation from John and Roseanne Pirtle to the library gift account for general purposes. Mr. Veliver, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hold on, just waiting for this to load here. There you go. Be it resolved, the Town Council approves Resolution 022525-3. Be it resolved that the Town Council hereby accepts and appropriates a $200 donation from John and Roseanne Pirtle to the library gift account for general purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Thank you, Ms. Pearson.
I think this motion's pretty self-explanatory.
Yes, this one is. This is usually consent calendar
right.
stuff, so unless anyone does have a question, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, motion passes unanimously by those present. Item D is the acceptance and appropriation of $3,127.30 from Tours of Distinction to the Human Services gift account for the Senior Center. Ms. Allard.
Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 022525-4. Be it resolved that the Town Council hereby accepts and appropriates $3,127.30 from the Tours of Distinction to the Human Services gift account for the Senior Center.
We have a motion. Thank you, Ms. Pearson, for the second. Again, this is usually consent item stuff that we're squeezing into our second meeting. Ms. Ellard, if you'd like to say something, certainly you can, but
I did not prepare a speech.
Oh, good.
Mr. Jenks, go ahead.
Probably
and
gonna say
then
what you're
Mr.
gonna say,
Veliver.
but I just want to say it's a very nice donation. It's
Yes,
an
it is.
exceptional donation, so towards the distinction, it's a very distinctive donation right there.
Yes.
Right. My question is, do we know much about Tours of Distinction? Does anyone?
Isn't,
Okay, no, I was just curious, you know, who it is and what their connection is to the senior center.
So they host bus tours for our seniors, and when there's additional or leftover revenue, that's where this is coming from. Sure.
I was going to say, it's different though, Andrew, than the ghost tours, correct, that are done prior to Halloween?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. But yes, very generous, and we appreciate it. Call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Fully unanimously. Item E is the authorization to apply for an acceptance and appropriation of the 2026 Historic Documents Preservation Grant in the amount of $7,000 from the Connecticut State Library for records, storage, equipment. And Mr. Wolf, please.
Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 022525-5. Be it resolved that the Town Council hereby authorizes application for the acceptance and appropriation of the 2026 Historic Documents Preservation Grant in the amount of $7,000 from the Connecticut State Library to be used for records storage equipment. And be it further resolved that the Town Council authorizes Town Manager Sean M. Kimball to execute any and all agreements and documents necessary for said grant.
We have a motion, Mr. Veliver, on the second. Thank you very much. And Andrew, if you wanted to address this.
Sure. So the town clerk applies each year for this, going back to 2002. This grant will be to purchase a new locking cabinet for voting supplies, and then a locking cabinet for election records, and then a map cabinet also. So this will be our 8th map cabinet to secure all of our important town maps in the town vault. So we've been successful every year. Medium-sized community can apply for up to $7,000, which is what this grant will be for.
Any questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Andrew. Item F is the approval of Beautification Committee street tree planting agreements. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that Town Council approves Resolution Number 022525-6. Be it resolved that pursuant to the recommendation of the Town Beautification Committee, the Town Council approves the street tree planting agreements with the property owners as presented. And be it further resolved that Town Council authorizes Town Manager Sean M. Kimball to execute said agreements pursuant to the terms and conditions as presented and the approval of the Town Attorney as to form and function.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Thank you, Ms. Pearson, for the second. Mr. Walsh, do you want to kick off discussion?
Yeah, I've been bringing it up the last few months. They've been working hard trying to find places to plant trees down along the South Main Street. And they came up with a list of approximately maybe 12 to 15 businesses, and they've approached them, sent them letters. They've discussed how many trees they wanted on each property. There's about 25 trees. Mr. Martelli might be able to fill you in a little bit more since he is at those meetings too. So.
Sure. So following up on Councilman Walsh's statement there, we reached out to 15 property owners along South Main Street, starting from Town Center, going to the new Micro Creamery, the former Sweet Claus location. 15 letters were sent out. Of those, we've received 14 yeses and 1 no, and 3 maybes. So in your package tonight, there's a list of those property addresses. What's going to happen now is members of the Town Beautification Committee are going to go out, meet with the property owners, identify right tree, right location within those properties, and then move forward with planting. So our goal is to get trees in the ground in early spring, and then the agreement covers 1 full year of maintaining that tree and having it until it establishes.
Excellent. Mr. Jinks?
It was, I think, about 2 years ago when this first started, when I was still liaison there, so it's nice to see that this has come to fruition. It's also nice that the business community is supporting this. I mean, they're not really getting anything other than a tree, which they then have to maintain to some degree. So it's a great, partnership here between beautification and the business community. So it's nice to see it come together.
And the trees are all being planted on the east side of Route 10 where there's not power lines. That's been a question that I've received several times. So we're identifying the properties where there's no overhead lines in order to get some of the larger trees in to shade the roadway, which is kind of the main point of the program.
Mr. Malone?
I just had a question, Andrew, and this is wonderful. Who plants, do we plant the trees? We have a contractor to plant? I'm just curious.
There's going to be a contractor that's going to plant the tree. So that
We'll subcontract.
Right, so we're gonna get pricing from 3 individual contractors once we know the total number of trees and the properties and the species. And then we'll get prices, and then from there, we'll move forward with the most qualified bidder.
And we're planting them in the spring, so when you say maintenance, we're gonna water them during the summer this year? Yeah?
That'll be in the contract, so that's what we did last year too. So we got the trees in the ground, and then we provided watering. They had a water truck that they would go out there and they would water the truck when needed for the tree to establish, and the contractor owns the tree to establish and live for that period for the 1 year.
That's wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Helleberg,
Just a clarification, so for that first year, if the tree fails, that's the contractor's responsibility to replace it?
Correct.
Okay, nice, okay.
I mean, there's an actual legal agreement too that they're gonna execute, and so, if the property owner damages the tree, there is some culpability there. But for all intents and purposes, we don't expect that to happen.
Just wanted to mention one thing, because the beautification committee does have a budget, but I don't know if their budget will cover all 25 this year, right? It's good, so it'll have to depend on what kind of budget we give them for the following year, so.
Correct.
That will be discussed, I'm sure, during our budget.
Ms. Allard?
So I have faith that the beautification committee, that they have the expertise to know what the right tree is for the right location. And I'm very much in support of planting trees. I do have some concerns, though, as I was going through the material, and this could just be that my ignorance. Some of the smaller trees actually produce crab apples, and is that something that we need to worry about causing potential trip hazards on sidewalks or potentially attracting animals, which could then be a risk to drivers on Route 10?
So the trees will be set back from the roadway and also set back from the sidewalk. So there's sightline requirements that you can't plant the tree in the state right of way, and then also within those sightline clearances for driveways. The goal here was the small trees that you do see are all native trees, and so the crab apples help with the cultivators.
Right.
But I can tell you that this program is focusing on large street trees and not on the smaller trees in order to make the visual impact on Route 10. This list that was here, this was developed just in case there is somebody who wants a smaller tree on maybe the side of their property, but I can tell you that from the discussion of town beautification, the goal is to plant the larger street trees as part of this funding.
Okay. I would just ask, I'm sure they are.
It's a good question.
I'm sure they already know, but just to be cognizant of what might actually fall from the tree, where it might fall, if it poses a trip hazard, if it's gonna attract animals, do we need to worry about that posing a risk for traffic? That's my only concern.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item G, the establishment of a semi-quincentennial steering committee. And in case you wanted to know what the wording was for the 250th anniversary of something, it is semi-quincentennial. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Pearson.
Yeah, give me the tough ones.
Exactly.
Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution number 022525-7, Be it resolved that in accordance with the mission and vision of the state of Connecticut's America 250 Connecticut Commission, the Town Council hereby establishes a temporary semi-quincentennial steering committee to finalize plans for activities including but not limited to school programs, exhibitions, lecture series, community conversations in commemoration of the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 2026. And be it further resolved that the Town Council designates Assistant Town Manager Andrew Martelli as the town's Cheshire's municipal contact to the American 250 Connecticut Commission. And be it further resolved that, with the support from town staff, as designated by the town manager, the following 3 residents are hereby appointed to serve on the steering committee from the present until the completion of the events: Diane Calabro, Ron Gagliardi, and Arnett Talbot.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Pearson. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. You knew that we couldn't keep her away for too long, so.
And thank you, Mr. Gagliardi, for your service here and for being here to hear about the semi-quincentennial.
Yes.
Feeling very Quinny tonight, yes.
Item H is the Town Council Chair's referral of proposed demolition delay ordinance to the Ordinance Review Committee for their review and recommendation. So that is sent to our friends on ORC. Item I is the Town Council Chair's appointment of members to an adaptive field administrative study group. And I have the list right here. This is primarily going to be a committee driven by staff, although we do have Derek Hayden from the Challengers Group that will sit on the committee, Dr. Pat Duffy, who will sit on the committee representing the Park and Rec Commission, and I will sit on the committee representing the Town Council. Town staff will be John Gawlak from Park and Rec and Dan Bombero from Public Works. My selection was primarily because I knew that I was available during the day for the most part, and these meetings will be held for the most part during the day. Like I said, this particular group will be primarily staff-driven. So that appointment is made, and that brings us to a recess, the first ever recess of one of our council meetings. We are going to take a brief recess. We will do a quick new photo of the town council as requested by our friends at Temple Beth David, who are working on a new community guide. And then we will re-adjourn in room 207-209 and have Town Manager Sean Kimball, who is under the weather but will be on Zoom tonight, to walk us through his 2025 goals and objectives, and we will go into executive session to discuss the approval of the town manager's contract. So we will see you in a bit downstairs. And with that, we are in recess. everybody has it, or should have
Sure,
the.
if we're ready to go.
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I'm gonna share screen, and just please give me a sign if for some reason I freeze up or anything. You guys are a little jittery on my, so I hope it's, if you're hearing me clear now, that's a good
Yes.
sign to start.
Yep, everything's good.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with the goals and objectives document that I sent around both on Friday and that's in the packet. So here we go. All right,
We got it.
scroll up to the top here. All right. So again, I know everyone has had these and has had a chance to review them. I will just kind of briefly go through them, but not in any great detail, just to kind of get everything out on the table. What is in blue is either new or somewhat significantly changed from last year's document. And the purpose of tonight's meeting, of course, is just to discuss, any additions or subtractions that you'd like to see from this document, any other items that you might like to see added, and maybe where those fit on the priority list. And again, I know we went through this exercise last year. We were just a little earlier in the year last year. I think it was around middle of January, late January, and we kind of adopted these in the middle of February. So we're not too far off, but I would just remind
Yep, we lost you. Oh, boy. Text him.
Uh-oh.
There's some good stuff on Amazon, though. Remember the ladies wrestling? That was funny. The glow.
Yeah.
Every time, too. Right. Just once. Right. Yeah, like you don't watch that when we're not here. Sure. It's funny the things you remember.
Was that our end?
I know his internet isn't always, can be a little spotty.
This Zoom closed.
Oh, no, he said it's on the town hall app.
Yeah. This computer went to Amazon.
Huh.
Somebody was trying to watch us.
I did.
There's good stuff on it.
Sorry, guys, meeting's over.
Surprise, we're watching a movie.
I was gonna say, you were watching a movie.
Remember the days in elementary school? when
This
that
is Tom
stuff
Manager, I
was
made this
there?
decision.
Okay. I'm gonna prepare.
Okay, it's a good sign.
Well,
Here he is.
Hello again.
Well, hello again. So Peter, this is the same thing that happened to you during the
Yeah.
sports recognition group.
Yeah.
I'm worried there's something going on with the app on this Zoom card, because my internet seems pretty fine here, and it seems to be this is the second time this has happened. So I'll try again. If it happens again, Andrew, maybe we can just
I'm
conference call
creating
me.
one right now, Sean.
Right. Alternatively, the conference call phone is right there over by the window. You could just dial me in and then just put it up on the screen. So we'll work around it. I appreciate everyone accommodating my illness. Although hopefully you appreciate it that I'm not there as well.
Yeah.
All right. I will share my screen again. We're gonna take two. I'm not sure where I cut off, but I was just kind of getting started with the blue items are new or changed from before. So now there's a first goal, which is kind of a merging of two. We had an operations kind of category and an economic development category, and I've kind of merged those two together because there's some overlap. Also consistent with economic development being, now an integral part of the town manager's office and function. So the new item there is the selection process for the 58-acre parcel. Part of the reason that's new is just because also before we had talked about having the 10 acres, I've removed the 10-acre piece because for now we didn't receive any proposals on the 10 acres by the prison.
Yep.
The second one is the West Main Street Business District. Just a slight addition there with, respect to the need to spend the $400,000 that we have received and that the EDC recommended certain categories that Andrew's been working on there. providing assistance to the American 250th, and thank you earlier tonight for your approval of the committee. But that is actually going to be, that's going to be a lot of work over the next year and a half. And it's depending on what the committee comes up with, that's a date that we have to keep in mind. And there's certain actions you have to take both this coming July, according to the plans by the state, and also obviously by next July, well in advance of the 250th birthday of the country. Concluding the ongoing Labor Council RFP process, identifying opportunities to expand communication and utilizing website features and social media messaging. This is actually just a kind of a recharacterization of one we added last year through our conversations in this meeting. And then lastly, seeking out strategies to improve employee recruitment and retention in a difficult public sector labor market, and opportunities to improve employee morale, satisfaction, and recognition. Messages and events, kind of a long one there, but this is really becoming one of the biggest issues in public sector management right now. And I think this is an area that we can, we really need to make some strides, as it's harder and harder to compete on salary and even work from home opportunities and modified work weeks. But whatever we can consider that can maybe improve our opportunities there can allow us to continue to attract and retain good people. So that's certainly a personal goal for me.
Sean, you had skipped the the second to last, identify opportunities to expand. Did you do?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
I did. I think I just
Then
kind
I
of read
missed
it. It was last year. I think it was. I know it was one that Tricia had recommended last year. We added in. That was kind of just expanding our outreach with social media. That's a harder one in and of itself. As we know, Facebook and kind of which platform. I used to be really active with Twitter because it was a great kind of at least a little more one way. But now that Twitter has changed, it's honestly a lot harder. And I feel like the audience has shifted and it's not as reliable. So I think we've tried to utilize what's popular, and then what's popular changes. And we do need, I think, a more consistent strategy there. And I think, honestly, it's an area that as we're trying to fill the position sort of now vacated by Andrew, that's going to be another piece of, I think, what that person's going to be tasked with, trying to help us with. So that's something we'll talk more about, I think. Moving on, I guess, unless you wanted to go section by section, I don't know if it's maybe easier to just kind of read through them all first, or
I'd rather do section by section.
Yeah, let's do it while it's still fresh. So let's
yeah, absolutely.
let's focus
There
on
are about
goal one
37
and
of them, so
yep.
There's 37. It's a lot.
Anyone?
So any
Yep, done.
I know that you have it in your also mentioned things, but we had just approved the tree plantings down South Main Street. I'd like to see if there's any possible grants that are available where we can start focusing a little bit more on South Main Street to clean it up the way we've done West Main already. I mean, if you look at it, it's a huge amount of our commercial properties down there, and I think the trees are a great thing, but I think we should also think about other ways that we can make it look more that quaint small town look versus strip malls. So I would like to see if we can add that and try to see if there's any kind of grants that we can possibly go after to help do some more design work down there between where North Brooksville down to Cook Hill.
Andrew, off the top, are you?
So, I mean, it would be a good opportunity for a steep grant
Yeah.
for design work and then streets. I'm assuming you're thinking streetscaping.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
so I mean, there's many firms that do. They would come in, they would look at it and see where they could realign curb cuts and do some decorative treatments and sidewalks and plantings and whatnot.
Perfect.
I think that.
'Cause I know the Town Beautification Committee had brought that up as well, and that's where I'm coming from on that one, because several of them had mentioned that, a lot of focus has been on the West Main Street around Ball and Socket, when we already have this already established area that we really need to also put some focus on as well.
Yeah, that would be wonderful if we can get some design kind of direction on that, because it is a hodgepodge.
It really is.
It's developed over many years, and it could, something that would help pull it together would
And I
be
think you
wonderful.
could do some nice work over there too.
That's great.
Because I saw that too in the other comment, there was that section at the end, there was like 4 others things, and that was, and it was one of the things I brought up in my thing too, which was, we focused on obviously the north end and the west side, but we have an established south end, and we, some effort in there to making that, honestly beautification, but making it, so not just quite so, straight, okay, you're driving down the road, right? Some.
I mean, I thought that's where the trees were gonna go,
Yeah.
actually, over by Rishi's and the old RVs and that area, but.
Some of
Yeah,
them.
some, and obviously there's a couple strip malls there
We
and
need-
some others,
We need
commercial
more than
development.
trees.
there.
This is great, but
Yeah,
we
I mean,
need
if
more.
you
We
go
need,
down,
we need, so not redevelopment, but, opportunities to allow maybe some of those things to be redesigned or something that.
right, we
something
need a
that-
professional landscape architect to come in and give us recommendations, for sure. I mean, you can see there's like breaks and there's sidewalks on some sides, not sidewalks on the other. I mean, it needs to be kind of cohesively, like John said, it's kind of grown organically over the years. And I don't think there's ever been a plan really to look at streetscaping from one end to whatever the end
So
was.
maybe working with those property owners to see what can be done to fix some of them up as well. To spruce them up, but also just create a different, maybe a little bit different viewpoint for some of that in conjunction with some of those things. Because obviously you have to get them involved as well if you're gonna be doing stuff like that. And just putting streetscaping on may not fix, may not make it everything you wanna have done there. So hopefully there's somebody there who can coordinate all of those things.
Anything else on one?
Yeah, I had,
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
I just had a comment about the RFPs, and now that because we didn't get anything for the one, does it just die?
Can we
Addressing
talk
this
about
too.
that when we get to Park and Rec, because I had some thoughts on that as well.
Okay, I mean, I think
mean,
it's both, really,
Yeah,
right?
maybe it's both.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly, it doesn't have to necessarily, I mean, I guess that phase of the solicitation is obviously, we have our answer in terms of whether we got anybody. We can certainly try, and there's other things we can do, but I think on both that, which we can bring that back up with recreation or here if you'd like. But also on the piece that Don was just referencing, and I definitely agree, certainly from my standpoint, and Andrew and I talked about, the south part of town and more focus there. I know part of the reason I had it here as other is because it was a comment or a couple comments that were raised, during the process of reviewing our performance against this last. And I think part of the reason there hasn't been as much of a focus is that it also wasn't on our goals and objectives. So I think if we want it to be a goal or objective, then we should actively add it so that then when we're looking back, as opposed to reviewing, and I guess having, feedback on something that we weren't sort of quote unquote tasked with doing, that way we'd have it on the list as something that we want to see and we fit, where it fits in on the list. And that goes obviously for all of the items, how there's no shortage of great ideas. We want to do as many of these as we possibly can. Of course, at a certain point, we have to be realistic about how many focus areas we can have before we're also focusing on a lot of different areas. So again, West Main Street has been a focus and certainly has been a focus of the council for the past better part of a decade, along with the north end. And that's been really what we've been driving at through goals and objectives of the last 7 or 8 years for sure. So definitely open to shifting that and adding that bullet. I'm happy to do it. Just wasn't on last year's, just to be clear. All right, do we want to move forward?
I had a couple other on
Yep,
this.
go ahead, John.
Just a couple. One of the other items that was removed was the outreach to businesses. I assume we're not gonna not have outreach to businesses, but it's not gonna be a priority, or what does that mean, Sean, that it's removed?
I think it just, again, I look at a lot of these, and remember, this is where these are the town manager's goals and objectives. So the things that, as we just did last month, we're reviewing, our performance against each one. And I think, as I was just kind of saying too, we still do, of course, outreach. We still have, obviously the business appreciation breakfast that we'll keep doing and things that are business related. I think, truthfully, I think the problem is we get to a point where we can't have 50 items on a list and say they're all priorities, right? So at a certain point, we need to kind of prioritize which ones are the focus. It's not to say we don't do that. Andrew and I I do a lot of business outreach in the community, but I can't say we've been able to do as much sort of, door knocking and business visitations as I would love to have the time to do. But as we're trying to do the other, 38 priorities here, it sometimes, we look back as well, I'm scheduling, our work or prioritizing the work of staff to make sure we're driving at the things that we've adopted through this process, so that I can stand before you in a year and say, or in this case in about 8 months, and say, we've done or made significant progress on everything you've asked us to do.
No, that's fine, but we won't, as long as we won't ignore it, because you had promised us that Andrew would do both jobs, if I remember correctly.
That's a good point.
I mean, just so you know, so there's a level of comfort. I mean, I'm not gonna stop doing that. you know?
I know that.
Just this week, we're putting together the top 10 employers, and so I had to reach out to all our top 10 employers. I did my normal call, and how's everything going? Are you happy with, everything that's going on in town? And,
No. Thank you. As long as, that's fine.
Yeah, but if I could ask, I mean, are we planning, this is something too, I guess, there is gonna be a replacement? You're just trying to decide what a position would be, since we don't have an economic development coordinator right now? Or I guess, where are we right now in terms of, are you just working with one less person? What is the long-term strategy here right now?
Yeah, so right now we are, I'm still working through, and Andrew and I have been meeting, regularly to kind of plan out where the pieces of his job, and namely, the obvious pieces are the grants management work, which he was also integral in, but that's a position probably combined with some other responsibilities. But I got to make sure I balance both the need for him to fill the roles and the support that Arnett provided, so that I still have that level of support, while maintaining his role and his skill set in economic development. So I think peeling out, as you'll see in the upcoming proposed budget in a couple weeks, and I'm still crystallizing this a little bit, so just a little bit of a preview, but no, that there will be a position filled. I'm not saying that we're going to do the work of 4 people with 3 people going forward.
Right.
We absolutely need, we just got to, I'm carving out which exact elements of that job description, and also expanding and seeing if this is an opportunity, as I touched on with social media, the website, or other pieces that we've kind of always had a need for a communications type position. Some sort of hybrid grants manager, communications person, I think is the role. Whatever that title is still TBD, but those are elements of both a need in the office and a piece of Andrew's former plate that I can't realistically expect him to still do.
Right.
Both. So.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so these goals, it will likely tie in with some of these goals, is where we're moving.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
So Peter, before we go on, I have one last thing. On
Sure.
the goal number 1 on the summary, Sean, where you talk about efforts to grow the town's grand list to lessen the tax burden on residents and businesses. As a practical matter, you can't really just focus on growing the grand list. You've got to put things in place, so that's not going to happen immediately. And we recognize we're going through a transitional period of time from a tax perspective. I mean, I don't know if we want to, and I know you're doing this already, but I don't know if people are comfortable with adding this, but I'd like us to ask you to look critically at town expenditures during this period, as well as looking at the grand list growth, because whatever we can do to minimize tax implications during this next few years, when we have loss of some exterior funding, some TIF funding that's not going to bring our tax to the level it will with some of this the grand list that's going on, and the increased school debt. So I think that should be an objective. I don't know if others agree, but I would like to see it in there.
Isn't that the next section?
Is it on the?
If the next section is
may be
finance.
I think that would be most in finance, where we do highlight and have always tried to maintain high levels of fiscal responsibility. Certainly happy to beef that up with targeted efforts around expenditures. But I do think that verbiage from goal 1, and that, again, that's been there for a number of years. That was really aimed at the economic development component, which is just namely growing our grand list. And we still have that with the 58 acres and others opportunities to continue to grow the grand list going forward. But certainly, yeah, I mean, it's a point very, very well taken, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if you can control the financial implications on taxes through finance. I think it has to be through management. That's why I would suggest it be in general government and operations, but that's fine. As long as it's in there somewhere, I'd be more comfortable. So, okay, thank you.
I have a question regarding the first one. For seeking employee recruitment and retention, at what point does the police union's contract, does that fall within this? Is this something that's outside of your goals? How long do we need to wait before that might actually be finalized?
Yeah, I mean, some of that is, obviously not 100% within my control, but that one is, resolving all of the collective bargaining agreements is that fourth bullet where it talks about the town council RFP and negotiating the actively open collective bargaining agreements. So that, it's one of, the police contract's one of those, of course. But yeah, certainly tied into employee morale that crosses union, non-union positions. And again, it's something that is a topic amongst towns. My colleagues are discussing, I feel like at almost every other, statewide meeting or annual meeting, I attend a lot of workshops and roundtable discussions on employee engagement and again, recruitment and retention and job satisfaction. And I think we just need to continue to focus on that as an employer, because again, to the point John just made, we're not in a position to be, necessarily competitive from the expenditure standpoint with salaries and other pieces, benefit, packages. So we want to make sure people are really proud to continue to work, and I think they are proud to work in Cheshire, but we can always do more. And that's a piece. I think as we compete, we're also competing with some towns that have modified, their office hours to make things more employee friendly, and there's a lot of considerations that aren't always necessarily expenditure increases, but that could have a good impact on not losing people to towns that find that as a competitive advantage.
Good? Okay, 2.
All right, 2, again, a lot of this is a holdover finance. We've long had great pride in our fiscal stability. And I think to the point, again, referencing what John was just pointing out with, I guess, probably more bullet number 3, but we do have a bond sale here. That's a very important, we have a bond sale in about a month or so. That's a very important process where you kind of get a reality check of the market's opinion of your performance and your financials. But again, we are doing a bond sale here every year because we have major bond issuances to fund the construction of these 2 elementary schools. So I've modified the language there because, again, we will do everything we can to make a strong case for AAA bond rating. There are pieces of a AAA bond rating that are not in our control and that are just our fundamentals. But we always score very high on those things that are, we're probably as high as any community or higher on all the metrics that are in our control. But we also know that we are taking on a significant amount of debt, and that in and of itself can have an effect on the rating agency's opinion of your credit worthiness score. But we're going to, I'm relatively confident we can maintain that AAA bond rating, but I did, modify that language slightly to make sure that it's clear we're going to make the strongest case we possibly can. But that needs to be a top goal for the town because that ultimately saves us a lot of money if we're successful. Otherwise, the other 4 pretty much stay the same, updated for dates. But I would just point out, I'm happy to modify it if you'd like, but to John's point, developing a responsible fiscal 26 budget, which we're actively doing right now, that maintains the high-quality services that we expect, but is in the absolute most cost-effective manner possible. And that's something we do every year, and I know our staff and our departments take great pride in. We certainly take to heart. I'm happy to edit any of these if you'd like to change the language.
Yeah.
I just have a quick question. It's in regards to the TIF funding, and I know it's going to be a few years before that, we see that, but at what point I'm assuming the TIF committee would discuss this, but assume it's gonna have to be town staff too. Some of the infrastructure that might be needed up there, at what point does that discussion start? Is it, because I'm thinking within the next year or so, we're gonna have to start thinking about, once that stuff starts opening up there, what might be needed, what may not be needed in terms of, fire station, whatever it could be. But I'm just wondering, at what point does that discussion start?
I mean, at the staff level, we've been having those discussions, really for a number of years now. I just had, in my budget meeting with Jack, last week, we discussed the North End Firehouse and whether or not that's, because we're also, again, I'm pulling together a capital budget proposal for you, again, in the next couple of weeks. And we've talked about various other alternative service delivery models, including expanding the Byron Road Station, which can reach that area in a matter of minutes, or the South End Firehouse in Southington, which is, just really a stone's throw away. So there's a lot of opportunities there to explore that aren't, it's not a foregone conclusion that we have to build a North End Firehouse, certainly in my opinion, or in the chief's opinion. But it's conversation we've been having at the staff level, and I think when there's a recommendation to be made, and we'll be talking about some of it in the capital budget here in a couple of weeks, because you'll see the same planning money is in year 2 as we had it approved for last year for the North End Firehouse. So I think part to answer your question is within the next year there'll be more probably staff council conversations around it, but it's something that as professional staff we're monitoring. Our fire chief has been monitoring for a number of years.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if that should be one of your objectives to start that discussion, but obviously you have already, so I don't know if you need to add it in there or not. But.
Yeah, either way. I mean, I don't know that it needs.
Yeah.
I don't know that it would need to be on this list, in my
Okay.
opinion. But I think it's something that's very much on our regular topics.
Okay.
Sure.
The only thing that would be worthwhile to making sure of, Sean, is that before there's a decision on the selection on the North End property, if there's a need for any land to be designated for town use, that's the time to find it rather than let all that land be allocated otherwise and then find that we need a piece of land to do something with. So if there is going to be a long-term need, we have an opportunity to set aside land now, and we don't want to lose that opportunity. It sounds like we won't have a need, but if there is any likelihood, we ought to be thinking about it, I guess, now rather than later.
Anybody else with finance stuff?
One other thing while we're on this, and as Sean said, so on bullet 3, Sean, where you talk about, developing a fiscally responsible operating capital budget, and you say that's consistent with every year, and you do that every year. I think we're in a unique period now, and I'm wondering if the wording could be changed a little rather than just say the most cost-effective manner possible, but in a manner which minimizes impact on mill rate, because I think I want to be aligned as a council member with you, with staff, with that goal in mind, that we want to, during this transitional period, minimize the impact on our mill rate.
Yeah, I'm happy to add that if everybody agrees and wants that in there. Sure.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sounds like.
Do you want me to add to it and just say that minimizes the impact on the taxpayer, or do you want me to take out cost-effective manner? Either way is fine.
I'm fine either way. I think we're, it's just I want to focus on that. Yeah, I know it's cost effective, but we have a kind of a goal beyond just being cost effective, that we're trying to accomplish something specific. So.
Yep.
Yeah, however you want to do it, Sean. If you want to adjust or just add a sentence, we're cool with that.
Okay.
Sean, one last thing, and I don't hate to keep on adding things. I don't think this needs to be an objective, but having sat on the retirement committee board and watched the management of a substantial amount of money that supports the town's retirement objectives and obligations, and seeing how well it's done, I think that Jim does a wonderful job. I think the board is very focused, and the consultant has done a wonderful job as well. I just want to make sure that you're personally kind of focused on that as well, because it is so important to us, and if that does go off the rails in some way, then it could be significant. But I mean, they seem to have just done a wonderful job over the years. I just would like to make sure that you're attentive to that, because it is so important, that's all. That's all.
Sure, all right, yeah, absolutely.
Anyone else?
All right, moving to
3,
number
public safety and health.
All right. So I put these, and while typically these aren't necessarily all in a ranked order, they are a little bit, I think, in this category. But I've added the 2, the first being ensuring implementation of the updated processes and procedures for the animal control facility consistent with DOAG's consent order agreement, and completing necessary renovations and facility updates, while also continuing to plan for long-term ACO facility solution and location. And then the second one being, which is a modification, last year's included monitoring Chesapeake Health District's finances through the creation of an MOU. Again, that is modified slightly because while we have an MOU, I think it still needs to be obviously implemented and accepted, and there's a lot of things up in the air with the Chesapeake piece, but I know it's still a goal for the council to continue to get the Chesapeake situation sorted through, and so I've articulated it this way. Again, happy to have edits if needed, but monitoring the district's finances and future goals and plans through the implementation of the town council requested MOU and by development of a monitoring process. And then that ties in a little bit to the next item, which is a carryover assisting with the relocation of the Chesapeake headquarters to the former Arts Place building. And then, Don, this touches a little bit on the piece you asked about the North End Firehouse, but I've had on the goal and maintains a goal for myself to, and Jack, of course, to continue monitoring the fire department and volunteer fire staffing, including their volunteer numbers and their response times. And then just sliding forward before we kind of wrap up on this section, I have both the completion of the ongoing construction of the Emergency Operations Center in the basement of Town Hall, the one we added last year for the emerging social service issues, including expanded case management support for local emergency or temporary housing for individuals in our community as the next item. And then the one I added here under public safety, although it could probably go in a couple of categories, is finalizing the design and initiating construction on the sidewalk expansion projects, including Jarvis Marion area to the new North End Elementary School. And that design is actively underway, almost complete. And then potentially Landing Drive. We'll talk about this a little bit in the capital budget. There is a petition reemerging for Landing Drive sidewalk extensions as well. So, seeing as those are going to be likely
followed closely by the protest of sidewalks on Lanyon Drive.
Yeah, that's entirely possible too. But I know both of those are, and again, the first one is really a requirement of the approval there for the school. And more to come as we'll talk about the capital budget, but engineering is almost completed with the design and, ready to get that project started fairly soon, as soon as we get a few more neighbor approvals if possible.
Sean, are you prioritizing the Lanyon Drive just because of that petition, or is there some other reason for that?
I just added it when I was adding Jarvis is the priority in terms of we have a school we know is being built and it's part of the P&Z approval, and we need to get sidewalk to Moss Farms area. While I was adding it and knowing that Merrick has been coming to me with the Lanyon Drive petition that was delivered, the Public Safety Commission I think has at this point, if I recall correctly. Just knowing it's likely to be a topic, I added it. We could take it off. I'm not saying it has to be a top priority because it's on this list. I just figured it goes nicely with another sidewalk expansion project, both of which are connecting to schools. So
yeah,
I was going to say the only thing about this one is it's additionally tying in proximity to schools, and one that we have visited once already.
Yeah, I also just wonder that if we want to revisit, or if we want to think about prioritizing the Route 10, you know, near where, across from Stop and Shop,
Yeah,
down
that
to,
section, yeah.
down to Highland Avenue, or down to Highland School, that whole section.
Oh, yeah, we could certainly add that in here. America has two designs on that,
Okay.
both the north and the south, that are actually complete, I think, at this point. So those are just awaiting funding. So you know, that, if you wanted to just add that one to this, I'm happy to do that.
I mean,
It's probably
yeah,
closer.
we could talk about 25 sidewalk projects, we can talk about it all day
Yeah.
long. I'm just wondering if we want to think about prioritizing these at some point. And we don't need, doesn't need to be in the document necessarily, but.
So, to that
Right.
point, Sean, what if we took out specifics and said on sidewalk expansion projects, concentrating on proximity to schools?
That's fine.
Which would incorporate Jarvis Marion, it would incorporate Lanyon, and it would incorporate Highland.
But we also talked about that small section from East Mitchell to
Yeah.
That's
to
what I
Chase
meant.
Bank.
Across from Stop, that's right,
Yeah.
across from Stop and Shop down to Highland School.
Well, but we're also talking about the one from East Mitchell to the other way to Chase Bank, that one small section, because with all the apartments, there's no
Chase all the
cross.
way down.
I was thinking about all.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too, but, and one other section, just to, Cherry Street. I know that, the neighbors there have been asking about it, I know they met with Chief Drive about it. That's where the back entrance to St. Bridget's comes.
Yes.
Kids are walking to Dodd from there as well, and there's no sidewalks, and it gets busy at school time.
Yeah, yep, I've seen a proposal on that from the engineering department. I don't think it's ready for
Yep.
prime time yet, but it's, I think it involved making Cherry Street a one-way street, but that's a bigger conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because of the logistics and the geometry
Yeah, I
of
don't
the
know
road,
how
I guess.
that's-
but-
Which
How that
side?
will go. Yeah, exactly.
You tell
Depends
Father
on which
Romans.
way. Yeah, you tell them they can only go one way.
Yeah, so I that one, it's definitely on the radar, and it's on the list that, you know, Merrick and Neil have been, like, as you suggested, they met with neighbors out there, they've discussed some ideas, but, yeah, I mean, maybe it doesn't have to, for a goal and objective, I mean, Peter, maybe it just ends after sidewalk expansion projects, and we can just, you know, we
Yeah.
can simply make it a goal to continue to, you know, these have been a priority for the council for the last, at least, you know, couple of councils for sure, and clearly now, we have some, at the end of the day, we will build what you fund in the budget. So at the end of the day, as long as we're building what you told us to build, and we're designing and building what you told us to do, you know, then maybe it doesn't need any specifics. I just changed it here. I don't know if it shows on the screen there, but
Yep.
maybe
Is
we just
everybody
need to-
okay with just leaving it
Yeah.
kind of open-ended like that?
Yeah, I mean, because we all have, I think we all have big projects that, you know.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's a
Well,
whole.
the only thing that I would be concerned is, you know, well, it said sidewalk expansion projects, well, it didn't hit mine,
Right.
you know, that type
Well,
of
then-
thing.
yeah,
So
right,
I
Maybe it'll
don't,
be unapproved sidewalk expansion.
yeah, exactly. So at some point, it's gonna be incumbent upon this group to set
What those
what the
are.
priorities are to give to Sean, so that that's
Yeah,
the
yeah, budgeting
focus for staff.
And you'll see some in the budget. You'll see budget proposals. It's just whether we, again,
But
none
by
of them
the,
are free, so.
by the way, some
got
of
fun.
this we'll get some help on, because with the transportation, the multi-modal transportation study, they will also focus on sidewalks and walking paths in addition to other things. So we'll be able to incorporate, I think, their good work with some of this.
I think that's a good point, John. Probably even more of a reason to leave this kind of open-ended.
Great.
Anything else on safety and health? Education, Sean.
Sure. So this one had 2 bullets last year, kind of a carryover. I just modified one of them, but now there's 3. The first being, this is the one that I modified from last year, providing support, planning, financial, other technical, to the construction of the 2 elementary schools, as well as any potential future next generation school modernization projects. Again, that's you know, through my role as a board member of the, or as a committee member of the Next Generation School Building Committee. I've certainly spent a lot of time, and continue to spend a lot of time on that initiative, so I do think it's worthy of being a goal on the town manager's goals for the year. And it's clearly a marquee project, the biggest capital projects the town's ever embarked on, so worthy of a bullet for sure. I kept on the determination of the future for Chapman and Darcy. I know council's been having some of those discussions already. And then the last one's a new bullet, again, open for conversation, but I wanted to crystallize some of the comments we've had over the years, and I think obviously Route 10 traffic around the Bartlett Cheshire High School area is, I'm sure for all of us, one of our most frequent sources of complaints and headaches. So I've just put it down. We've had some recent conversations with Superintendent Solon. We've over the years explored a number of opportunities, and we have kind of some more to dig deeper into. One of them being, this sort of paper street off of Elmwood.
Yeah.
That we, we're still, it's a very complicated title situation, and we just had a meeting last week on this. It is not an easy process, but there is a process we could explore, so I want to talk to the council more about that very soon. But the bullet encapsulating whether that's the solution or something else is a solution, exploring options for addressing the growing traffic concerns in that area, including opportunities for road improvements or construction to provide any alternate entry or exit points from the property. So I know this has been a topic for many years. We have a few thoughts that the engineers have kind of come up with, and as I just said, that Attorney D'Onofrio has helped us kind of do some title searching for what our rights or possibilities could be. But I know this is something I know John and others have raised for a while now, and it's something I think we just really need to see exhaust every opportunity to try to solve, because if we could have any relief for the bus or car traffic at those times a day, for people turning particularly left, northbound, it would really help the traffic situation. So coupled with the parking and the crossing, the activation of the pedestrian crossing at those same times, it's all part and parcel to the whole issue. So we just know it's a priority that we hear a lot about, and I know it's probably a priority for all of you as well. So I wanted to put it down and at least try to make some progress on that issue.
This will probably be another one of those things that the multimodal transportation plan may help us with a little bit.
I agree, and I'm wondering, as with you said, Greg, before, whether it belongs here or somewhere else. I wonder if this belongs in the transportation side with a focus on making sure they focus on this in transportation. Either way, I think we have to make sure our consultant is connected with any of these discussions around the high school. In addition to the obvious ones along with 10, but the alternatives that could help alleviate that, we want to make sure that we utilize them to their fullest extent to help us with this stuff. So I don't know. Again, I don't know if it belongs here or this belongs in the traffic one. Maybe it's a hybrid. As long as we get to it in both, I guess it's okay.
Yeah, I'm happy with it in either spot. I just know that the school district is a critical partner, and I know the superintendent. I mean, we met last week with Jeff and his transportation, director Luther. We met last week to talk about, because they're also talking about potentially modifying school start times, and things like that can all have an impact on how this is addressed. So I do think it's a partnership, but I agree it doesn't have to be an education. Happy to move it to transportation if you want. However people feel.
It would be good to find out how much faster could you get through there theoretically if the traffic were improved. I mean, I travel through there every morning about the time that the buses are turning in. It doesn't take that long to get through there, frankly. So I wonder how much faster, how much more efficient it could actually be. It's just a question we should ask at some point.
I live on Elmwood.
It's more the Elmwood problem.
Yeah, it's very difficult getting
Out of Elmwood.
Yeah, at certain
Yeah.
times of day.
Yeah.
And it's also very dangerous because especially the new drivers turning from Thorpe onto Elmwood, so that way they don't have to go through the high school entrance. They often forget that they have to stop before they turn left, and they assume that anybody who is coming down Elmwood must be going to the high school. So if you're heading straight down Elmwood, you have to approach Thorpe extremely cautiously, because quite likely that car might not stop. I've seen many accidents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one thing. I'd like to talk a little bit about Humiston, which is the last of our non-ADA compliant schools. I know, when St. Thomas Becket was up and Jeff Solon and you and Vin all took a tour of it, and they came back saying it won't work for them. I think we need to find out what are they looking for and what will work for them, because I get concerned about the cost of that building that they're in right now, and I don't know if it's the Board of Ed's thing that they should be doing, or should the council be doing it, but I think we still need to look at that, because I was a little disappointed that it was just kind of blown off that quickly, because they said it wouldn't work for them, and I think something like that needs to be vetted a little bit further than it was, and I don't know what they are looking for, what they're expecting. I've asked this to them before, and I really haven't gotten a full understanding of what their needs are for the board offices and for the school they need, but I mean, I don't foresee us building a $10 million, $15 million building for them in the very near future, but if something comes up that is, suitable for them, that would require, a little renovation, maybe it's something that we really need to look at a little more closely, because I think Humiston is a desirable building to developers too, that we could probably sell off, if we can find a place for them to go. So I would like to see what we can do.
Well, and that may fall into the plan for the future of Chapman and Darcy too. If, you did something there that, with one of those schools that became central office or whatever, but yeah.
I mean, we'd have to gut those and rebuild them for the most part, but yeah, but I think we need to start the discussion, because I think that building is going to be very costly, especially if we ever have to replace that roof.
So just, Sean, for the purposes of this, and not to be too wordy, I would just say Chapman, Darcy, and Humiston. And I think that incorporates what Don is talking about too.
All right, moving on to.
Everybody good with education? Okay, sorry, go ahead, recreation.
You're fine,
Yep.
sorry. Our fifth category, and I know I just responded to this, I think, last week, but I added as the first item, a new item, which is exploring the feasibility of acquiring access rights for the construction of a second access and parking area for the Yankee Highlands open space property on the southern side of the property, and oversee an approval process, this ties into the entire Yankee Highlands property for CT NEMBA's proposed network of mountain bike trails. So again, that was new. Neither of those were on the horizon last year when we adopted this in February. So I've added those to confirm that they're, again, priorities for the council. Which again, as I kind of said, I think before, that's just, there is no shortage of great ideas. I think this is a great idea. I just want to make sure we're realistic in how many of these we're, and that we're serious about, moving them forward, and that everyone's agreed to each of the items, so that we have, we can divvy up our staff time and our department's time most appropriately. So that's the new item there, which I'm sure we can talk about. The next two are carry forwards to complete the Bartland Park South capital project, Angelo construction and final closeout for late spring or early summer 25 completion, hopefully more late spring. Evaluate and pursue opportunities for land acquisition and the closeout of the Oslo grant for the 257 Fen Road and the completion completion of an open space management plan for that property. And then other items that we've added this year support the planning, location selection, and design of an adaptive turf field project. Thank you for approving the administrative committee earlier tonight. Implementing construction of phase 2 of Mixville Park Master Plan, including grant funding, hopefully. I know we're pending our steep grant answer, but for the improvements we discussed for Mixville, including a new pavilion, pedestrian bridge on the property. Next item, completing design and initiate construction, depending on funding, of the new splash pad amenity at the community pool. That's still ongoing design. And the last one is conducting a Cheshire Community Pool master planning process to identify and quantify future capital projects necessary to continue to operate as critical components continue to reach their end of useful life. We had a report done a few years ago by Weston and Sampson for various components of the building, and a lot of those are, some of those are actually failing even sooner than the report had said. Obviously, we're dealing with the boiler project right now, which thanks to the council's funding, we're able to move forward with that critical replacement. But just a reminder that it's a 25-year-old facility, and it's got those kind of issues that any, not only a pool have, which pools are very expensive, but also some of the components are older than we all probably remember them to be. And so we just want to make sure there's a master planning process and that everyone's committed and on board to the necessary expenses to continue to operate that well into the future. So even the roof skin is coming up on its warranty dates, and things that we feel we only just did are not as recent as we may think they are. So I think it's a good time. John Golick really supports. We're kind of at a good kind of crossroads with the pool where he'd like to see a kind of robust master plan process for the next 25 years. So those are my suggestions under recreation. Happy to talk about anything.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I know that, the master planning for the pool is necessary. Every Energy Commission and every Parks and Rec Commission, the pool comes up in one form or fashion. I know that Galwick has been focused on that. I just wanted to add the point 3, these open space management plans. I don't know if perhaps that might be, that's something that John Galwick is also working on. I'd like to see continued work on that. They developed a plan working with some folks from DEEP for Roaring Brook, and they are actually talking about pivoting from the De Dominicus property, which this one would begin to hit, and instead focusing on Yankee Highlands, since there's so much attention on Yankee Highlands, and so actually going there next. So maybe if that were just to be a separate bullet point, just about developing open space, identifying those open spaces in our community where we can continue to develop open space management plans. I expect this to be a long-term, beyond just even this year, but kind of leaving it open and allowing opportunities for Parks and Rec to determine which open space, but I'd like them to maintain it on their radar. I think it tends to get lost when they're talking about sports fields, so I want to keep a focus on open spaces somewhere on there if possible, and developing some of these plans for each of our open spaces. Casertano eventually, De Dominicus eventually. Maybe not this year,
I mean,
but
we have, and maybe it's more updated because we have open space management plans on all of those.
they're not detailed. If you look at what
Yeah.
Deep put together for Roaring Brook, that's detailed. It goes into
Right.
the flora, the fauna. It goes into a great deal of detail. The trails. So it's much more detailed than what we have existing.
Oh, yeah, yep, that makes sense, yep. No, that was the state forester that you walked, and I joined them for that walk. It was very educational, certainly for me too, to walk up to the top and down, and then his report was very thorough. I was very impressed. What we talked about along the way and more. So, to the extent those can be incorporated on all of our properties, that would be very helpful, I think, for everybody.
So isn't the Environment Commission working on those as well?
It's Parks and Rec, really. It's through Parks and Rec. So I mean, Environment Commission has been supportive, but it's all through Parks and Rec. So it's John Galwick really who's been working on those.
Because
it helps the Environment Commission because it provides them with information. Absolutely, yeah.
Because the Fenn Road parcel, I thought they were focused on it when I sat on as liaison to environment, and they seem to be making progress. But I still, as a resident of town, and I know the property and I've seen the maps, I don't feel welcome on that property. I mean, there's no parking area, it's kind of grassed over. There's no bridge to get over the river. And there's no real trail system that invites you in, so we have a piece of property there that unless you're on the Environment Commission or you're connected to someone on it, no one really uses it.
Yeah, the parking lot, yeah, the Old Lane Road is the only other place where you
And
can
it's not
access
really,
Dita
it doesn't look like a parking lot, it looks like,
No.
you're kind of intruding into where you should be.
You're on the
doing-
side of the road, yeah.
So I mean, those are things where I think we have open space that our residents aren't using because they don't feel welcome there. I mean, De Dominicus is a great example. I live right across the street from it. I hardly walk it. I'll go to Brooksvale and Hamden to walk because it's easier for me to just get there.
Right,
And get
and it
onto
needs
the-
management, because that's something, I brought Bill Stanley just because it was the work that they'd done at Ives Farm with the Cheshire Land Trust, and he was the one who introduced the fellow from Deep to John Galwak, and started this whole process, saying basically, you need to do this for all our open spaces, what we've done with Ives Farm, because De Dominicus is full of barberry, and it's gonna be, like, catch it now is what Bill Stanley said before he left, he left town, he retired, just moved away,
Yeah.
but he said, you need to catch this now before it really becomes overwhelming and incredibly expensive and time-consuming to address, and so preventative maintenance is necessary, which is why these open space management plans, I think, are important for us to include in here, because we need those for all our open spaces.
That was a conversation. I'm not sure if that helped you at all, Sean. We got sidetracked there, but.
Yeah.
No, it does. I mean, no, it's great. I think it, it all ties in. A lot of this is going to tie into budget too, of course, when it comes to, the costs of some of that. I will say, I think, and John came to us and I supported, and through, I know the Rec Commission and Environment Commission is thrilled with this Open Space Stewards program that is kind of brought from this prior community. Where we've sort of, deputized individuals to go out and help do some basic identification and some clearing of some of the invasive species, because, the beautiful thing with we have acres and acres of wonderful open space and great trails. It does take a lot to manage all of that and keep it clear on a fiscally responsible budget, right, without extensive numbers of additional staff to do it. So if any opportunities we have to have these very capable volunteers trained and sort of deputized to be stewards of the property, I think it's a really great win-win, and I know that those individuals have been really thrilled as that kind of program is getting launched. So I know that ties into this, and it's certainly a goal of ours to again, maximize our taxpayer dollars and still provide these great amenities as we just discussed, for sure.
We also had discussed at one point to address the parking issue at Cheshire Park with the pickleball courts and now the disc golf. I have a feeling the disc golf is going to be a big draw for people, and between that and the pickleball, and then you got people playing Little League or whatever, using the gazebo down there, I think we're going to have a parking issue down there, and I think we should start thinking about how we're going to handle that.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see a proposal for redoing the parking lot in the capital budget in the upcoming years. In terms of whether it's adequately sized or not, I think that's again, I want to have our engineers' comments on that. I agree with you about the disc golf. I think there will certainly be some excitement and interest around it. Historically, when we've talked to communities that have active and popular disc golf courses, the parking needs aren't quite as extreme as you might think. It's not. It's a very intermittent activity, but I hear you. I mean, I certainly on a beautiful day, if you had a confluence of events and things happening there. But again, we want to kind of study it, I guess, a little bit more before we necessarily have to expand both either the southern or the northern parking lots at Cheshire Park.
Yeah, well, I see them parking on the grass last summer they were already parking on the grass when they were having pickleball tournaments or whatever they had, but they used the grass a lot over there too.
The hill?
Yeah.
That was the south
Yeah.
parking lot, not the north one.
The south
Yeah, I
one,
think
yeah.
when
The north one
when
has
we
a
repaved
lot.
this-
CJF
When we repaved the
parked on the
southern
grass
lot, I
if
think
you're on
there's
the
an
north.
opportunity to reconfigure it a little bit like we did with the library, we pick up some more spots. But yeah, absolutely. I think when it's been packed, it certainly fills up. So there might be an opportunity to expand it, or at least have like a gravel, expansion somewhere.
Yep. And Sean, getting back to what Greg had said earlier, and since we don't lose it completely, is what about the property from the state across the street from Cheshire Park? Since we didn't get any interest in the public RFP, should that become something that we evaluate as a town to look how it could be best used as a town and begin to plan a long-term program? I mean, not something we want to fund in a year or two, but maybe 3 or 4 years from now, if we plan for it, to start to fund improvement to that parcel. So it doesn't do us much good sitting there, and we've got to start to think about what we're going to do with it and budget for it, I think, anyway. And sooner than later, in my opinion. Unless we're thinking about trying to go back out to a public RFP and seeing if there's another interest for some reason.
Does it hurt to do that? I mean,
Well, I think we went out once, no one was there, I'm not sure why, I assumed, I mean, you can you can take the time to do that again and see what happens. But I mean, it is land that we own, and land that can be developed for recreational purposes. If we looked at a needs assessment and a development assessment, I mean, none of us wanna spend, a bunch of money right now to do that, but we can begin planning for it, so we can start to look for grants or opportunities to develop that property in the town's best interest for recreational. Or we go out again, I guess, but either way, I think that we shouldn't lose sight of it. I don't wanna go another year without starting to plan for it one way or another.
So I wonder if that could be a priority of the Park and Rec, of John, rather than the town manager, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know how that gets done, that could be fine. They've gotta tell us where the need is, I guess, whether it's, whether it's more pickleball, whether it's, I mean, we're not gonna build a big building that was someone else, thought about doing over there, I think, but we could potentially build fields.
But did CYB had, and I'm wondering if they ever did any design of that, because when they originally, came to the town and they had a whole group together, and I don't know if they ever did any kind of design plan for baseball fields there, but it would be interesting to see if they did, just to see what they had envisioned there. It might give us some ideas. I don't know who to go to.
I think, my prior firm did work for CYB, and then there's grading issues there, et cetera.
The grading is the
I was
biggest
gonna
issue
say,
there,
if that was a flat piece of property, it would've been, something would've been on there 10 years ago.
Our soccer folks have been looking for that
Yeah.
a long time. It's the grading that
Yep.
really
We
is killing
should,
these projects.
we should, as a town, implement a soils exploration program over there, so we know what the soils are like, so you can see whether it can be, that earthwork can be kind of manipulated, cost effectively, whether there's any value in that soil, et cetera. I think we can do that with town forces. We can get backhoe out there, we can dig it, we can observe the soil down to a reasonable depth. At least it begins to inform us as to what might or might not be available there. I think it's a limitation in knowledge that it's easily rectified. And that's something we should do, whether it's Park and Rec looking at it or whoever looking at it. We need that information at some point, and I'd like to see that done sooner than later, so we can at least start to look at, the potential of that property. You remember Bartland Park years ago was built by the operating engineers. That soil was all, it's one of the reasons those fields don't drain, but that's a whole other issue.
It became a training ground for people
Yeah,
with,
They rode dozers over it until they compacted it.
Yeah, exactly.
Over-compacted it.
Made it like concrete.
Yes. But I think, one way or another, I think we should keep it on our radar, and if it goes to Park and Rec, then that's fine, I don't know.
I was only suggesting that because, we've talked about the town manager has a certain number of priorities. For him, that sounds like one maybe they could give to Park and Rec. But
I hear you, I don't know if it's too much.
But he doesn't, I guess I've always viewed these as Sean manages these,
True.
so these
True.
are things that we
True.
want Sean to help disperse in terms of.
Whoever you
He's
Yeah,
managing, delegates it to,
True.
Yeah, they are both. I think with a mind toward, though, that certainly when it comes to this recreation category happens to be one real department, and so yeah, it does become how much John and his his very limited staff can accomplish, or in concert with Public Works. But yeah, I mean, we just want to make sure we're working on the priorities of the council. And if this is a top priority, you know, then absolutely, we can shift things around to make sure we, you know, we do some sort of internal investigation of those 10 acres and see what other opportunities that might lend it to. I agree, it's a very complicated property. I mean, I think the access alone is maybe the biggest impediment in a way, beyond even just the complicated grading. But yeah, I think it's certainly something we can continue to explore, if that's a priority, for sure.
Maybe the state be willing to swap that piece for a flatter piece someplace else.
Yeah, really. You got something flatter you can give us?
We could do that. We could trade.
Yeah. What were you gonna
Yeah.
say,
So
John?
again, we can certainly do that.
I'd like to see us not lose sight of it and go another year without talking about it more. I mean, I'm not sure we'll come to a conclusion, but I'd like to see Park and Rec look at needs, and we can look at, you know, feasibility, development feasibility, and at least start to have some direction on it.
Is there any other way, is there a way to change the scope of what we can do on it? Like, I know that the edict was that we have to have it for recreation, but if it's been, what, 20 years since that property's been sitting there, can we go back to the original gifter and say, hey, can we reevaluate? And I don't know what we could put on there, but.
I know Tim White wanted solar panels at one point, so.
But,
it's-
right, but if nothing is going in as recreation for 20 years, can we reevaluate that and do something else? I don't know what, but.
Didn't it come from the state?
Came from the state.
Yeah.
Right.
The stipulation was it had to be recreation.
That's what I mean, like, go back to the state and say, hey, this is, no bites on this, so let's reevaluate.
Although, just revisiting access could be big. If you can get access off of Jarvis and that road in the back, that could change the.
It's the access problem, I think that's the biggest problem.
Anyway, I'd like to see us just kind of continue to kind of stay focused on this in some way without any foregone conclusion, but not just let it sit dormant for a year, that's all.
I mean, it fits with the conversation that we all had at some point about our fields in general and needing to have a kind of a longer term plan about all the fields, so. Yeah, I agree. Should be part of the conversation.
So let's just, unless you already have, Sean, let's just capture it under here and before we finalize this and
Yep.
vote it, we can take a look at priorities.
Sure. I'll just add it. I'll add a note, and I'll put something in there later. Okay. All right, and then.
Anything else
I'm
for
stretching.
recreation?
Oh, sorry. Does everyone agree with all of those as the key objectives?
Yep. Okay. 6.
And then 6 is mostly carrying forward for last year. It was a new category last year, kind of combining sustainability, transportation, and energy. And you see the key objectives there. We last year put them in 3 kind of subcategories, a little different than the rest of the document. But one was responding to the emerging sustainability and solid waste issues, including, and then we talked about the NIPS revenue, streamlining and establishing a consistent bulky waste process, and exploring food waste diversion or pilot programs we've been doing. The next is more around multimodal transportation, which includes public transportation and bus shelters, and ensuring the progress on multimodal transportation study projects. So that's obviously the existence of that is a new one from last year's, but it builds off of what we planned on doing from last year. So I just kind of clarified the language there. And then the last one being energy performance contracting and audits, and now it's supporting the ongoing energy performance contract 2.0 initiative from the town staff standpoint. So those are those items.
Just a quick question on the bus shelter thing, 'cause I know that has been brought up the last few years. Is that something that the state has to do, or is that something that we do? I mean, because it's a bus shelter for the state buses, but, I mean, or is that something towns do?
Yeah, so it's sort of a partnership, and there's a state or CT Transit standards, but also what's been kind of supporting this in the background, although it's been a little stalled out. Our friends at Elam Park have been very interested in assisting the town. They've offered to have their architect, they've been paying for their architect to provide some ideas and concepts for a possible, a proposed bus shelter there at Cook Hill. And unfortunately, it's recently, as Brian talked to me just last month, he decided to take that project away from that architect to another architect, so it's because he wasn't getting any progress on what he was hoping to get from that. So there's actually supposed to be a meeting in the coming weeks. I'm hoping to reconvene with our engineers, both Merrick and, well, previously Justin, but now Phil. We met out there at Elam Park to discuss this proposal. The idea was to get a bus shelter sort of concept or standard design proposed that we could bring to you guys, of course, for approval. And Elam Park was really excited to kind of help fund that, and that could be a model for additional bus shelters throughout town, and we'd have a consistent sort of theme. But again, the design piece of it, as we're, again, not looking to give horse and mouth, Elam Park has been kind of driving that piece of the conversation, and we very much appreciate their offer to do so, but it's just stalled out a little bit from that standpoint. So, but it is something towns have a significant role to play in it, but also within the right-of-way the state, of course, has the right to do a bus, stops and shelters in the way they'd like to see. But if the town wants to propose, or through like something like this public-private partnership opportunity to fund them, they won't stand in the way, but they have certain design standards that they adhere to.
I was just going to go back to the first bullet item, the sustainability and solid waste. It's not a pilot anymore, so I think we could take that off because we've piloted, but exploring food waste diversion. And I was wondering if we should add recycling in there just because we've expanded our recycling. There's something we have done a little bit, but we're still looking at continuing to expand. So over at the old station, now the mattress recycling is going on there now, and I don't know if it's something for us to look at, but the redemption models, it's just continue to explore what we are providing there. And I know we talked maybe even providing the anaerobic food waste diversion to complement what Boulder Knoll is doing, potentially. So we had talked also, so if we could maybe just keep that in there, so it's exploring food waste and recycling, food waste diversion and recycling. And then the only thing I would...
You put some additional language.
Yeah, no, that would be great.
I just added it as and expanding, exploring additional recycling opportunities.
Yep, sounds perfect. And then the only other thing that I would add maybe is a bullet point. This is where our sustainable CT certification expires this August. And so just somewhere, somehow, a commitment from town staff to work with the sustainable CT team. Because the only way we're successful is if we get the documents we need to upload to our system. And so I know we have Ray Harris, who's going to be serving as our liaison right now. But just a commitment, not just from Ray, but from all town staff to assist us. Because if we don't receive this certification, then our community partners are no longer eligible for that sustainable CT funding that is out there.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anyone else on this? Okay.
All right. And that concludes the proposed. I did have a. I had, as folks noted earlier, there were a few other items that you just tried to list. It's definitely not exhaustive, so if you have others to chime in with, some have already come up, but a few that were raised kind of during the year, and that we just wanted to see where they fit, if there's still priorities you'd like to see, and kind of how they fit in amongst the others we already discussed. Some are more recent. What we just talked about, South Main Street commercial area, the town council chambers, security upgrades, and physical improvements was a topic we had about 5 or 6 months ago. That could, again, some of these can be conversations in the budget. And just to be clear, not everything on this list has to. There's a lot we talk about capital budget and other things that don't. We will still do and don't have to be on this list. But we just want to know if there's planning or design work that you're hoping or expecting will be done now, it'd be good to have that, maybe this is an opportunity to have that conversation collectively, that these are priorities. So I think in that category, the town council chambers security upgrades is one that we talked about before. Some that are, again, recent topics of possible referrals or referrals I think earlier tonight, or the noise ordinance or demolition delay ordinance. And then again, I think the last one I added today, I know Greg had raised the question about, and maybe Greg, we're going to talk about this, the Cultural Affairs Commission, or sort of a modification of the CPA board was another item that you wanted to raise, I think. So I don't know if there's others you'd like me to highlight, if we want to discuss any of these now.
What's the demolition delay ordinance? I'm just curious. I don't recall what that was about. I might have missed it. What does that mean?
It's, it came out of Historic District Commission. It is, and Greg, you can probably
So it's
do
just-
a better
it's a-
job with this than I will.
It's a method to save some of the historic structures in town that are not in the historic district. So, use an example of a barn that exists on someone's property. They want to develop their property. It allows for someone else in town. It forces the developer or whoever owns that property to make notice to the town that this piece of historic item they intend to get rid of it, or they want to get rid of it. So it will put it out to the town. So say someone else wants to go in and save that barn, not necessarily keep it on property, but instead of having it sent to a dumpster, they take it and they build it on their property. It's just another way to keep some of these historic buildings
I vaguely
going in
remember
the
it now that
dumpster.
now that you explained it. Okay. Just curious. I couldn't remember it. Thank you.
So, yep.
And I also think a noise ordinance would be extremely difficult to really enforce, especially, you have to have our police department going around with, find out what the decibels are. I'm almost wondering if we should maybe create an ordinance where setting times where contractors and construction workers can start and finish by, because I think that's the biggest
I
issue.
think we have that.
Do we?
Yeah.
Is it, I know we have it for the trash haulers. But I don't know
I
if we.
think it's more general than just trash, isn't it, Sean? Or am I wrong on that?
I think there's something with the state.
I'm not aware of, I mean, the trash is prescribed in our, we have the ordinance, but we also have,
Contract.
we have the contract with AJ specifically for pieces what he does, but those for non-AJ companies, we do have the ordinance that
Yeah.
specifically for trash collection though.
Oh, okay.
That's just trash. I'm not sure, but that's not to say that there's not another piece that I'm not familiar with, but I'm not aware of one for contractors.
But like, I think that people get concerned, about, tree cutters starting at 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning, going to 8 at night or 9 at night. Or, contractors banging on things at 7 or 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night.
Or bands playing
Yeah.
at restaurants.
Yeah, it's more
Yeah,
likely. I
there's
don't
that.
think contractors tend to come
Yeah.
and go within hours.
There's also like pressure washers or leaf blowers before 7 a.m. can be a problem too. That doesn't necessarily have to be a decibel.
Yeah, and I know the chiefs responded to this in the past that there are state statutes that our officers can rely on with a level of discretion. They're not around specific hours, but they are creating a public disturbance or disorderly conduct violations. And the first can be, again, it's a misdemeanor charge that the officer can at their discretion say, you're creating public disturbance and it meets certain criteria. Often, compliance is gained simply by knocking on the door and saying, can you just turn it down or keep it down or whatever, that's probably 9 times out of 10 or even 99 out of 100. But, I agree, it does become kind of problematic sometimes when you have, and you often will see, neighbor v. neighbor disputes kind of spill over into, now it's 9:01 p.m. and I'm going to call the cops every time I hear a noise. It can be complicated.
So with these items, Sean, if we don't do anything with them, will they just come off the list, or will they be on here as items that we might get to during the year, so we don't lose kind of sight of them? What will happen with these items?
Yeah, I think I would not put them on the list unless they were. Now, we just referred demolition delay ordinance, so I mean that's. But also, just because it's referred, I don't presume it will necessarily, that one I don't know that it necessarily requires being on or not, whether it's on the town manager's goals and objectives. But if it's a priority of the council for us to work on the issue, which we preferred it, so now it's at least before the ordinance review committee, so we will do what we normally do, whether or not it's on this list. So, but I think it's more just in the context of others. I think noise ordinance is probably more in the category of, it's more than just reviewing an ordinance review committee. It's staff research and time and Attorney D'Onofrio crafting language and all that. I mean, we don't want to do any of it if it's not a priority.
So South Main,
that hasn't been.
South Main's gonna be moved to a priority. The council chamber security upgrades, if we don't do anything with it, we're not gonna do anything with it during this year, so that will stay.
That'll be tackled during budget. It may become a goal and
It may,
objective.
okay. I'm just.
It all depends on what happens during budget.
Okay.
It could. I have no proposal for it in the budget because I don't have it as a current priority either, right? So we can add it and it could come out of budget discussions as something to start looking into and designing. We just don't have any existing funding or anything to do a design on a council chambers redesign or anything.
How about putting the pictures back up?
We do have plans to put the pictures back up.
I'm fine with leaving it off, but I know some council members were more concerned. I mean, I like the sense that we're
They were
connected
sent
to
to a professional framer, and the cost was much more expensive than we had budgeted, so we are now finding a lower cost option and put them back up.
Dollar store.
Okay. And then items removed, do you want to touch on any of those, or those are?
I just added those for your own. So you can
Yeah, those are
cross-reference
completed
last year.
things.
Well, they're mostly completed, or, some of them are. I think the first one was one that was pointed out as, I guess I go back to my statement that it's hard.
Okay.
If we go from, we have 38 priorities right now. If it's 58 or 78, right, at a certain point, they're not all top priorities, right? So I just think the list needs to be, the list of goals and objectives for the year. We have about 8 months to go until we're reviewing how we did against these. So I just think it needs to be as realistic as possible. And so I did take some off that I thought were either going to happen organically anyway, but didn't necessarily need to be a part of the review, and how did we do against, last year or the year before, or how much progress do we make towards this end? I felt some of those could come off as I added on probably 15 more to what we had last year, right?
I was fine with those.
But yes, half of them are, I would say, beyond that first one, Mixville Park, relocating Arts Place, developing a public gathering permit, creating a new website, doing an e-packet solution. The social media piece, I kind of tied it into another one.
Yep.
The town hall space needs assessment we canceled when we didn't fund it in the capital budget. And then a staff resource for sustainability initiatives and reporting was done as we modified the deputy director of public works position. So yeah, I think 9 to 10 of those I think were completed.
And our website is now CheshireCT.gov.
It's going to change to CheshireCT.gov. Yes. Now both will still redirect.
Okay.
And it's seamless from a user standpoint. But that is, you'll be getting, well, if you've probably already seen from Apex, you'll be getting some updates on that. And just know that is a compliance requirement if we're going to also have the governmental protections. I don't know why we were ever set up as .org back in the day, but we're fixing that now. And for a lot of technical reasons that I can't explain as well as the IT folks can, we have to be a .gov if we're going to be a municipality and protected from a cybersecurity standpoint. .org is not what you want to be anymore. So we have to make the change, but the emails will still, you won't notice as you send emails out, it will transition to .gov, but anyone replying or sending an email to us or you, .org it'll still come through without any issues. At least that's what I'm assured.
Anything else from anybody? The last thing I'll say is, this has to be a living, breathing document. I think it's important that we take a look at this again. I would almost say let's, end of August, beginning of September, let's do, a regroup on this as a special town council meeting to discuss goals and objectives. It can certainly be brought up by you, Sean, if you find that with shifting priorities from council members or whatever, and there's a consensus that if something needs to come off because too many things are going on, that we have that ability to do it. So, but we probably should just put on the calendar or radar something to do a revisit of these once adopted August or September, just so that we kind of change priorities or look at priorities. If something comes up in the course of the next 3 months that becomes burdensome, that takes away from the ability to accomplish goals, that that we have that ability to make changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it should be, it might need to be a little earlier than that, only because October kind of gets right, well, September is close to October, which is when we should be doing the review,
Yeah.
the normal schedule.
Yeah,
So this last year, we remember that the intention of shifting it to this time period, or we're a little late now, was that the review of how we did should take place in October, or finalized in November. And then the setting of new goals and objectives for the year is supposed to take place in December. So we're just we got to get back on that tradition.
Yeah, we do have to get
December
back on
always gets
track.
crazy, but we weren't able to schedule the review until, because of conflicting schedules, until the end of January.
I had originally written down July for a revisit, so maybe I knew what I was talking about then when I wrote that.
There we
so.
go. That works.
But we should do a revisit, yeah.
Yeah, because remember, in a perfect world, the council, and any changes to the council that might occur in November, that would then be a December opportunity for them to establish their goals and objectives, however that is. So that was the vision last year, and I think we're just a little bit.
So,
a few months behind.
Do you want to recirculate a finalized version of this, and then we'll approve it March?
Yep, vote on the March 11th meeting.
Yeah, because we're only a couple, 2 weeks away from that, so, okay.
Yep, no problem.
All right, and with that, I'll accept a motion to go into executive session to discuss the town manager's contract to include the council and the town manager.
So moved.
All in favor? Sure. Aye. Okay, excellent.